Well, good day. Welcome back to our series on becoming God's people. I should start with if my hair looks a little different in the next couple of videos, it's because I challenged some kids to uh, raise some dental kits for a mission in Honduras, and they more than exceeded their goal, so they got to dye my hair purple. Anyway, this week we finish off the book of Exodus. Um, Exodus finishes by most modern Western American standards on kind of a strange note. The whole thing is about the whole end of the book after Exodus 34 is about Israel actually constructing the temple. It's a very long section on Israel building the temple and kind of repeating the exact same dialogue that was in the earlier chapters on God describing the tabernacle. Maybe not dialogue, but the exact same sequence. There are a couple of differences. One is that it's in reverse order, um, where the time before the golden calf incident, the people are shown the tabernacle from the inside, or Moses is shown the tabernacle from the inside out. On this one, it's from the outside in. I mean, this one is from the inside out. So the first time the tabernacle is described from the outermost court to the innermost holy place. This time it is described from the innermost holy place to the outermost court. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one is it makes a nice chiasm around the golden calf incident and specifically God's character. So what we see at the center of this chiasm is Israel uh, failing to keep the covenant, and because they failed to keep the covenant, we discover not punishment, but we discover God's merciful character. The other reason is because when they build it from the outside or from the inside out, what is described first is the most holy place. In other words, this emphasizes the holiness of this site and how they construct it. So it emphasizes the holiness. This long section, though, can be a little daunting. A few chapters of rather mundane repetition. But it is important to note that in this section we see that the people give far too much for the cause. Moses has to stop the giving. It shows that their character has changed, that the events around the golden calf have had an impact on the people. They now see the importance of of being loyal to the covenant, and so they are extremely loyal. You could also read it not that their character has changed so much as all they ever wanted in the first place was some assurance of God's presence, and that now that they have that assurance of God's presence, they are as excited and boisterous as before. The difference is that when they went through the dark times, when they went through this void of not having Moses and not seeing God's presence, they, instead of being patient, they and trusting God that they would have that presence, they acted on their own. And now that they no longer have to do that, they are very excited. But still, the point is that they give exceedingly, they give abundantly to the project, so that the project has more than enough. There are some questions. There's a lot of questions about this, like where would they get that much gold that they would be able, gold and other precious metals, we should say. Where would they get that much gold and other precious metals to construct all of this in the wilderness? You can say that they took it from Egypt when they despoiled Egypt and left. But again, that raises some issues like, do they really have the resources and the energy and the drive to carry that much gold with them? In other words, if you're going to say the people despoiled Egypt, that's fine. But then they're carrying pounds and pounds of gold on each of them. Are they going to give up that? It's not as straightforward as it might appear. The questions that are raised by this are not, there are answers, but they are not as straightforward as you might think. The other thing is, where do they get some of the exotic goods? This is a real question. There would have been traders in the area, but where do they get it? What finances this? Again, did they despoil Egypt, or do they have to procure things out in the wilderness? These are questions. They're not terribly important questions, but they are there, and so I want to at least discuss them. I don't know. I think it is likely that that the people took less from Egypt, but were able to somehow trade in the wilderness. They would have had goods, services that they could have provided for traders. They could have had enough flocks. They could have had enough sheep and goats that they could have traded stuff for fairly rare materials that these traders would have had. So I think that's likely. But do I know? No, I don't. Where the reflection is going to pick up this week is that at the very end of the book, Exodus 39:40 especially, there are a number of words and phrases in these two chapters that seem to reflect Genesis 1 and 2, specifically the seventh day of creation. The idea here is that because these words and phrases reflect the seventh day of creation, what the people are doing is creating a Garden of Eden kind of thing. They're creating a temple, but it's meant to reflect this creation, that this sacred space that God had created previously. So the people are creating something that is meant to reflect the beginning of creation, where humanity was to have unbroken relationship with God. And these are slight allusions. I'm not going to say it's overwhelming. Some scholars are not convinced by this, but it seems likely to me that this is part of the point. After all, the whole of the story of Exodus, the whole theme of the story of Exodus has not been simply the people gain their freedom. If so, we would have ended the story a few chapters back. We would have ended the story sometime around chapter 15, maybe chapter 20. The story has not been about the people simply gaining freedom. The story has been about the people having the opportunity to serve and worship God. And now they do in the tabernacle. But that service and worship is being defined as communion with God in a way that is very similar to Genesis 1 and 2. And so we have to look there to kind of see the ideal service, the ideal worship, now that the Israelites have a place for that. So that's some of the background to Exodus. Next week, I'm going to jump into Leviticus. I know it is not one of most people's favorite books, but there are some really interesting themes in Leviticus. There are some really interesting thoughts, and hopefully over the next month or so, I think month or two, we can make Leviticus somewhat enjoyable for you. You might learn something and grow, and see that it's much more than just a book of outdated laws. So until we meet again, God bless. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if you have any questions or comments for me, just let me know. You can leave them lots of different places, but you can leave them in the comments below, and I will try to check those and answer any questions. So have a blessed day.